Are we ready for AI to start welding? Let's find out with today's amazing guest, Mark Barglof.
Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence Podcast, where we make AI simple, practical, and accessible for small business owners and leaders. Forget the complicated tech talk or expensive consultants. This is where you'll learn how to implement AI strategies that are easy to understand and can make a big impact for your business. The Artificial Intelligence Podcast is brought to you by Fraction AIO, the trusted partner for AI digital transformation. At Fraction AIO, we help small and medium-sized businesses boost revenue by eliminating time-wasting, non-revenue generating tasks that frustrate your team. With our custom AI bots, tools, and automations, we make it easy to shift your team's focus to the tasks that matter most, driving growth and results. We guide you through a smooth, seamless transition to AI, ensuring you avoid costly mistakes and invest in the tools that truly deliver value. Don't get left behind. Let Fraction AIO help you stay ahead in today's AI-driven world. Learn more and get started at fractionaio.com.
Mark, I'm excited to have you here because we often think of AI as just inside the computer, but it can be really helpful in the physical world as well. And I'm really interested because we just had an incident recently where a robot in China attacked someone and that got a lot of attention, but that company has had multiple robot attacks. So maybe it's the company. If it happens a bunch of times and it's the same place, maybe it's them. But I just love to get your perspective on kind of from the manufacturing world, what is starting to happen and what's like the overview just to get started.
Yeah. So Kinetic Technologies, like you said, Jonathan, we're a welding solutions provider. We do it through Robotics, have been using some really cool technology, throwing some things together in the manufacturing space. To your question, what are we seeing, particularly when I talk about AI? Robotics up until, I would say, with the last 5 or 10 years when AI really has gotten to be accessible, has been a fairly manual process to program a robot. So you got to move it from here to here and do this and that. Last 15, 20 years, we've been looking at different vision systems, but there's been inherent problems with that. So like the manufacturing light, differing light conditions, those types of things make it pretty hard to do these operations. And really, when you're doing manufacturing stuff, it's built around human beings that are seeing things, they're thinking about stuff, they're manipulating parts, these types of things. And so robotics has been good, but it's been fairly simplistic. I'm not saying it's simple, but as far as its ability to do things, we've been looking at ways to traditionally, how do you make it so that a robot, you move from here to here? There's very repeatable process. There's things that we're looking at that are specifically more simple tasks, the redundant things. Now is what's really coming online is the computer vision, machine learning models that are able to identify parts, systems that are able to take CAD drawings, interpolate those CAD drawings, and then actually send that to the robot to do programming on the fly, which are exciting. All of that stuff is extremely exciting because it opens up new doors for higher levels of automation. And eventually what's happening with robots, I haven't seen a robot attack yet. I'm not sure how they did that, but no, what we see a lot with the robots is we're looking at these tasks that frankly, nobody wants to do anyway. So we're making a better quality of life. We're increasing productivity, and the robots are really a big part of that.
When I look at a lot of these like 3D printers and manufacturers, the big problem with 3D printer is that it can't tell when it's made a mistake. So it will do it. You go to bed, it's doing an 8 or 12-hour print. If it made a mistake an hour in, it doesn't have that detection ability. And that's really for scale, right? When you're doing 1,000 units a day, if it doesn't notice, it's like that I Love Lucy conveyor belt where she's eating the chocolate race. It's getting off track and it can't self-correct. The self-correcting is really important because what if it picks up a metal that's the wrong metal? Human's going to go, wait a minute, that's copper, not iron. But the AI, if it doesn't have the ability to detect that, now you've got this huge problem. And I think the computer vision makes a lot of sense to me as that critical component. It has to have the error check element. Is this the right thing? Because I watch a lot of welding videos on TikTok and YouTube. It's very fascinating to me because like I have a welder do something, like, oh, that's a $12 weld and that's an $18 weld. There's an element of consistency, but there's also an element of knowing this one is going to take 12 seconds, not 10, because there's something slightly off. And how close is AI now to being able to tell and to adjust on the fly without needing someone right there watching it, using that human time component as the error check?
Oh, it's shocking, honestly. I mean, how far the advancement is and what we've got with the capabilities. There's a couple things. Some of the stuff that we're using here at Kinetic, just signed on as a reselling partner for a technology called Abaji. And to your point, and what that does is it takes a CAD drawing. So you put the part in the CAD drawing, the system takes and analyzes the part, what it should be. You can even put in things like, to your point, Jonathan, on error checking, you can put tolerances in. But if there's part deviation within tolerance, the system is able to accommodate for that and make changes. So I just had a conversation with a potential customer yesterday about what you're just talking about. It's, hey, this system is so flexible. What happens if it allows me to make mistakes, which if it's starting to, and that welding has heat inputs, change the material properties, they make it bend, those types of things. So we want systems that are flexible and adaptable to be able to handle that. But to your point, the layer of intelligence that we're seeing is not only can it accommodate for that, but at some point it can say, stop, something's wrong here. I'm outside of tolerance. And what's neat is, traditionally what we've done is we will do a part when you do it manually. Yeah, you go do it. Welding especially is one of those things that there are some individuals that are really good at it. They produce really good quality welds. At the same time, you brought in the new guy, he comes in, it's terrible. It's horrible. But then that stuff has to get checked at the end of the line. What we're doing with AI is it's really got the metrology or the measurement systems built in as it's doing it. So not only can you do a better job, but you can also come out and make sure that it's within tolerance, it's within spec. It's pretty cool stuff.
Do you think we're getting to the point now where we can have more, like smaller businesses can have a fully automated process? It's like CNC machines are super cool, but you put the metal in, it does one thing. You have a human that's watching it, taking to the next step, and take it to a welding machine. Do you think we're getting close to the point where there could be an overarching process or AI that's watching it go through the entire like a fully robotic factory almost, where it goes through multiple machines?
I do. I really do see that. And I see that move towards the smaller manufacturing starting to see the capabilities. And there's a couple things that lead to that. One of them is AI, of course, but there's also the rise of more collaborative robotics operations. Programming in general has become much simpler as smaller manufacturers start to see that I don't need to have a staff of robotics engineers. Maybe you partner with somebody like Kinetic to get the initial system, but then we give the tools to the manufacturer so they're able to keep up with it. So that's where I see the AI portion of it is not only to the tools as far as the end process, but also some pretty powerful tools that are starting to come in for programming. Even if we get away from something like a prepackaged system like Abaji that does the scan into the CAD and the auto doing the programming, some of the other robotics operations. This couple weekends ago, we were stuck on a robot, couldn't figure out how we were just trying to how do we approach this robot programming? Put it in ChatGPT. We taught ChatGPT how to do some robot programming, and pretty soon we came out some pretty interesting solutions when it comes to programming. So I see that as you start to get workforces that gets much more comfortable with the AI tools that are available, they're going to start to see that robotics becomes very accessible. The tools themselves, you're usually looking at it going, oh man, that's got to be, if it's got a robot, it's got to be millions of dollars. Not necessarily. We're looking at pricing for cells with some of the flexibility. It's about a high-end CNC machine.
Yeah, I think that a lot of smaller companies think, oh, only a huge company can afford this. But the advantage of smaller companies is agility, that you don't have to, like, whenever I work with really large companies, like you have to do the same proposal to 7 layers. Oh, I like it, I'll tell my boss. I like it, I'll tell my boss. I like it, I'll tell my boss. And there's this really long buying cycle. And sometimes I know companies, it's 3 or 4 years to make a decision. Whereas when you have a small company, one owner, they have that agility, which is a really major advantage. And I'm wondering if it's starting to enter into the manufacturing space because I'm seeing in a lot of other sectors, we're seeing fragmentation, which is, I was just talking to some earlier today about how information or trainings actually, people would rather buy from a smaller company where they can talk to the main person instead of talking to a certified coach who's just an employee. It's like, I'd rather talk to a smaller shop where the person who's running is the person I get to ask the questions to. That's how I like to do business as well. So I could see there's this chance, especially now where we're trying to shift a lot of manufacturing back to America. It's a big push right now, and there's this big opportunity. It's like, how can we do that? So it's like usually foreign manufacturing, it's cheaper because they have lower safety levels. Have something that costs the same amount, but is also safe. Are the numbers starting to get to the point where someone can actually manufacture in America and compete without having to sacrifice safety?
Particularly with automation, yes, I believe that's true. When we did an install of a welding system in a company, and they were really good at data collection, so they knew what it took before, what it took afterwards. And they saw a greater than a 500% increase in productivity, in so much so that they had the welding process used to be the bottleneck. They went down the line. Powder coat became the problem. Had to build a new powder coating facility. So with things like if you can create 500% higher productivity with the same workforce, you can amortize the higher wages and the safety requirements of those types of things across more parts. Now we become very competitive. Particularly what we're seeing too is that the quality standards are higher in the United States manufacturing. Some of that stuff comes in from other countries and it may not have the same quality as you would through the US manufacturers. The pricing thing there's multiple layers to that nut that has to be pulled apart. One of them is if they're dumping raw material, say you're in another countries, China, India, whatever, and their raw material costs are significantly lower than ours. That's one of those factors that's tough to overcome. The other thing, and this is, I don't think people understand this in the United States, and I wish I had the graphic, but the highest buyer and implementer of robotics is actually China. And some of these countries that we're looking at to say, oh, we're going to attack this from a labor issue, our labor costs are higher. They're already automating at a very high level. So US manufacturers, I would like to really push them to say, it's not just about, if we've got a discrepancy currently in price, as they start to bring robots online and they can increase productivity, we need to be even that much more efficient. So we need to have more automation. We need to have a higher level of productivity to cross that chasm, bridge the gap. And to the point of safety, robotics actually, and before this, I was a co-founder of a company where we built driverless agricultural equipment. And what shocks me, and we saw this too, like with Waymo and those types of things, as things are automated, they become repeatable. I know what a robot's going to do. It's going to do the same thing that it did before, which is an interesting comfort when we start to do more complicated parts. Oh man, we're doing this. We just finally made it work. The robot's doing it. And at some level you go, oh geez, that was a hard road to get to that. I hope something doesn't happen. But with automation, what occurs is that the robot's going to do the same exact thing over and over again until it wears itself out. So that helps with the safety aspects, like the rogue robot going crazy. It's just not going to do that. Not unless somebody programs it to do that. It's going to be moving from point A to point B, and you're going to do that for the rest of its life.
There's this big concern, certainly from AI stuff, that I hear all the time, and this idea that everyone's going to lose their jobs. And I always say we still have farmers. There's still it's massively mechanized, but there's still farmers live on farms. There's still people who have chicken farms. There's still people driving the tractors, or even when they have automation ones, they're still getting up at crack of dawn and being part of it. Do you think that it requires someone who has a welding expertise to watch a robotic welder or to check its work to be able? I wouldn't be able to tell a good weld from a bad weld. So you could put me in charge of a robotic welder and I won't know. So
that's a good point. I like how you brought up the agriculture thing. I'm also a farmer. I worked in ag for a lot of years before I did the robotics portion of it. Same type of thing. The conversation about 100 years ago was, if we go to tractors, what are we going to do? My horse, the infrastructure around keeping a horse, feeding it, the oats, there was entire industry around that. We went to tractors and people found places to go. Same thing with industrial manufacturing we're in manufacturing 4.0, which is now, that means there's 4 industrial revolutions. We're in that 4th industrial revolution. The 3 before it didn't mean that our population continues to grow. People are gainfully employed. We're not booting people out on the street as this mechanization occurs. It's just that we start to become more productive. People start to look more towards, like you said, more towards thought leadership. So making humans do what humans do the best, which is creative thinking and free thoughts and those types of things. And that's to the point of with welding. We say this all the time. I can't be your welder. We can take a good welding process and institutionalize that and continue to do it. But if I have to teach you to weld, and then put a robot in there, we got problems. So you still need to have the art and science of the welding. You can be really good at the science, the material science portion of welding, but maybe not have the best trade skills, the art of making sure that the torch is doing the right thing or whatever. Yeah, it's you absolutely. In fact, I think that there's going to be a fairly significant increase in demand for people that are more deeply rooted in the weld process engineering portion, the process portion of it. It's productive. The robot's just going to sit there and pile parts behind it. You got to figure out, what are you going to do next? Where's that stuff going to go? Where does that bottleneck start to move?
Yeah. I think we've got to the crux of what I'm really interested in, because it's the same thing that I deal with, which is, first of all, people will say, I do digital automation. So same concept. If they don't have a process, they'll say, we don't have a process yet. And I said, then how do you know? Like, if you don't have a process, I can make it faster, but it will just break faster. Right? You have a road that just goes off a cliff and I make the road faster. Great. It's still going off a cliff. And that's really important. I always say, master the process before you automate it, because you have to know what you want. If you can't tell good output or bad output, then automating doesn't make a difference, because you don't know what you want. And that's important. The second part is, there's this constant fear, I guess, especially when I work with staff, they go, oh, don't automate it so much that I get replaced. I'm like, no, that's not. What I really do is push everyone one level up in management. So the person who's doing all of the manual entry, now they're managing the AI doing manual entry. You still need that person, because you've seen where the AI goes rogue or makes one bad comment, or makes an AI in Canada made like a refund guarantee. And they go, the AI said it works for you, so you have to honor it. And that's it. So it's like a really big deal. So I don't really see, exactly like you're saying, that humans disappearing. It's okay, we still have this amazing workforce. How could we redeploy them? That's the mindset I mostly encounter. I very rarely encountered someone who goes, you automated everything, we fired 20% of our workforce. That would have made me feel good. That would make me feel terrible. So
Yeah.
are you seeing that same mindset when it comes to manufacturing automation, where they're like, we already have these great employees, now we can deploy them and make them 10 times more effective?
Absolutely. John, one of the things so a huge red flag for me, first of all, I love everything that you said. I'd like to get a lot deeper into that, particularly because I really appreciate the leadership aspects of all of the things that we do. So AI, I'd like to talk about that later. But a huge red flag for me, when I first start the initial discovery phase with a company that's talking about automation, if they're like, okay, here's the people we need to get rid of. We need to get rid of Bob, Sally, Joe. It's okay. We got a problem here. You can't do, if I'm gonna 5x your productivity, you're gonna need Bob, Sally, Joe. This is not, you do not see the value in automation if that's what you're trying to do, is eliminate positions. Because at the end of the day, if you want to get rid of those 5 people, so first of all, in the United States, automation, if we can get 5x productivity, all we're going to do is reduce our dependence on or on imports. But we can do it. We can consume all of it. We're a net importing country. That means that we have a deficit when it comes to our productivity. So you need everybody that's in the workforce. But when I talk from company to company, everyone I talk to, they said, hey, I have a list of 10 welders, 20 welders, 25 welders, and this list is not going away. I just can't fill these positions. We want to increase productivity. We want to increase profitability. We want to create a good place to be. So those are actually the green flags that I see when we start with that consultation. When somebody goes, hey, I just had a company that came in, they said, I've had 2 companies in the last 2 or 3 weeks. We were doing the initial consultation, talking through welding automation. Company comes in, one company came in, they said, we are very proud of our diverse workforce. We would like to know, how can we do this to back this up, to make it so that this diverse workforce works better together, becomes more productive, remove jobs, create environments where we're gonna have people that are able to upskill. So we have really smart people. They just need a little bit of help when it comes to maybe some of the stuff that's harder to teach. But then from there, they've got minds that are beyond sitting in a welding hood and doing the same thing in a monotonous job. And I love that. I love those stories. You know what? The other company that we talked about where they increased productivity 5x, the good data people, They actually increased their staffing in their weld department and increased the salaries by 35, 40%, I think. So the people that were doing the job before and doing a good job at it, they just had a pile of parts sitting on top of them all the time. Once they got tools in place that were able to increase productivity, they upskilled. They started to learn how to do robots. They did welding better, and it made a lot of sense to increase their salaries because now they've taken on new responsibilities. Yeah, huge red flag. If you're saying, "Hey, in any way, shape, or form, I'm going to start getting rid of people," it's you're. What we're doing is we're filling holes in the workforce that just don't exist today, and we're just filling it with robots and automation.
Yeah, one of the things I always say is that everyone wants to work remotely now. If you have people coming into the office and you get rid of them all with an automation, you're going to really struggle to replace them, because I see people protesting outside like an Amazon office, and they have like massages and sadness rooms, and they have a 5-star chef. I've never had a job like that where they were like, "Would you like a massage at work?" I'm like, "What?" And if they don't want to work there, they don't want to work anywhere. And manufacturing, obviously, you have to be there in person even more. And I love that you brought up the repetitive task, because that's really challenging. I used to have a friend who put the back seats into Saturns, and he loved it. He did the exact same 4 bolts 100 times a day, 200 times a day. And I was like, I couldn't. That's a specific skill to be able to do a repetitive thing. I'll get distracted and then something bad will happen. That's my big problem. And it was really amazing to me. I was like, you have the skill, which is rare, the ability to focus in it, to do the same thing over and over again and not get distracted, and to be consistent is really hard. And he was like, but he did it for years. He was like, it's his dream job. And I was like, that's amazing. And you found the thing you're at. But that's not very common. It's less and less common now, because now we see everyone's watching TikTok. I have kids too. It's like, they can't watch a 7-second video. How are they going to do the same thing 150 times a day? So I think that's very interesting. And I think this is the critical part, is to see that tools and automation don't replace jobs. As we brought in automation, we switched to automobiles. We didn't fire everyone. Like, we didn't suddenly have everyone have not a job anymore. Jobs just changed. So when they talk, this is one thing that I get frustrated. They say, "Oh, jobs are going to disappear." It's like, no, they're just going to be new ones, right? There was no job robot repairman 20 years ago, right?
Right.
Now that's a job. Then there's going to be a job like machine learning and AI training. There's so many new different names for jobs and so many different opportunities. And I think it's also really interesting to see that it doesn't require a massive college degree and a doctorate to work in a lot of technology, because that's the whole point, is that it's making it more accessible rather than less accessible. Like, I rarely hire my staff. I rarely hire people that have been to college. I'd rather have someone that knows how to work. Like, all my friends who went straight into working out of high school, they became adults a lot faster than I did. They had to start having responsibility. It's a really different mindset. And that's what I find really fascinating. I think that we're going to see more and more as we start to realize, as we switch away from this mindset of replace your workforce with robots and AI. Like, there's no way, like when you have a humanoid robot, when you think about how expensive those are and the components inside, and they break easy, right? You have 1,000, the more complex a machine is, and you have something walk around like a person, those are like $6 million. What employee would you replace with a $6 million fragile robot? That's the thing. It's like, that will never happen. We don't have enough rare earths and batteries to put inside. Like, that will never happen. That's definitely science fiction. And once people let go of that and think, you can't replace your workers, what you can do is upskill them, make them 10 times more valuable, be more agile. And that's when smaller companies, smaller manufacturers, smaller businesses can really be agile, because these large companies are really making slow decisions. And that's why they're getting behind the AI curve, just like you're seeing in your industry. When you look towards the future, what do you think is going to happen over the next like 3 to 5 years when it comes to AI in manufacturing and in welding and other types of machining?
Yeah. I'm almost hesitant to answer because it's unbelievable what I see in advancements almost every day. Each time ChatGPT drops a new model, it's, oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm living in this environment where you can have this type of a technology. But I would say AI is still, it's kind of, like you said, there's some scariness to it. People still look at, oh, it's robots, given it's Terminator, Judgment Day type of things. I think as AI starts to get more integrated into people's lives, just like the internet. As I was a kid, we'd go to the library and they had one dedicated computer that you could look at. What do I do with this thing? And now it's just ubiquitous. That's what you do. It's kind of like an extension to your brain. And I see that when manufacturing, there's several things that as we start to evolve, not just in the process, but you go beyond that. You start looking at what if I could take, and this is not a what if, it's possible. It is happening. What if we could take and look at productivity, or we look at the parts that come through and we can scan that stuff, start to create heuristics, start to understand when a machine starts to go down. So we have prognostic type of applications that increases quality, catches things faster, reduces recalls. Those types of things start to get better as we go through the AI stuff. The things that were complicated before that you had very few people doing, those things are going to start to be easier and more accessible. Like with the robotic space, as AI starts to come online, that's where we're really going to see that robotics becomes much easier to implement. And when I first got into the robots, we started Kinetic. We were an engineering prototyping house. I did work in AI, worked in machine learning, computer vision applications in the ag tech world. But when I saw the first robot, the collaborative robot, I thought, wow. I do think at some point down the road, we're going to be going and getting our cobots, our collaborative robots, to do things like dishwashers and doing your dishes. That, if you've got something that can interpret where stuff is at, it programs on the fly, it picks it up, puts it down. And that makes it so the life's a little bit better if I didn't have to deal with doing dishes every night, which is always a problem. But you start to see that, I think, just across the board. Now, it does bring up a good point, Jonathan, when you talk about the smaller companies and the agility. That is the most important thing. There's going to be companies, and I can see them, these larger companies that just aren't, they've got this. I was just received from a client. I've seen this a lot where I get like 47 pages of requirements for, hey, before we put a piece of machinery in, we got to do this. The cost and the implementation cost of doing that and the leadership capital that needs to be burned to get some of this means that it's got to be right off the bat. Whereas the smaller companies taking the iterate to put something in, take a look at it. How does it work? Make a change. We're working with a company currently. We're putting in a cell in New York, and they're automating a welding process that they've been told they can't do it. AI isn't there, but interestingly, to the job point, what they're doing is they're putting in an entire industry has been created around cooling and data centers. So to your point of, I think that American manufacturing, just in general, we're going to see more. It's going to be more productive. Working in a factory in the next 5 years, I think is going to be a lot more advantageous. People are going to go, really does feel more like a comfortable environment. The environment's clean. The robots are doing the stuff that we don't want to do. Humans are most empowered to do the things that we do best: think, communicate, rationalize, create, be more creative, have more of a focus on leadership. So the workplace is going to start to evolve. And then the things that we're doing, when we talked about before, all the people that were taking care of shoeing horses, the blacksmiths, now the tractor comes in, they start doing different things. And then industries start to crop up, like this company that's all of a sudden, there's this huge explosion in requirements we've worked with companies that for radiators or for generators, the backup generators for the AI data centers, huge demand for that didn't exist before. Same thing with tubing or coolant pipes or those types of things that help to cool these data centers. And you'd also talked about the jobs that are being created, for example, in the machine learning environment where we need to classify photos. In my last company, we used a company that would outsource these jobs to image classification. So we'd send tons of raw data out to areas that were socially disadvantaged. Some places in rural India, we had them classifying imagery, which creates a whole new set of revenue possibilities that weren't there before. We also, if we needed it to be based in the United States, we could have it done in some rural places that are really socially disadvantaged where it's hard to get a job. Now, all of a sudden, we have this job of going in and doing image classification so that we can run it through our models.
Yeah, I think that's really amazing. I think that's the kind of mindset I have about AI and automation, is that it's moving us forward, not moving us backward. And I think that's what gets me excited and hopeful. I think a lot of people are going to find this really interesting. For people who are interested in what you do and want to know more about Kinetic, kind of think, oh, maybe AI welding or these types of technologies really help our manufacturing, because we do have a lot of manufacturers, a lot of people in the manufacturing space listen to the show. Where's the best place to find out what you're doing and check out the amazing stuff you're doing now?
Yeah, always could go onto our website. It's www.kinetictechllc.com, which when you start a business, you don't think you're going to have, you're like, oh yeah, that sounds good. kinetictechllc.com. Yeah, it becomes, yeah, it's on our email and everything else. But yeah, check us out there. I spend a lot of time, we focus on the aspects of leadership. What does it mean in a management organization and manufacturing to implement automation, AI? I spend some time communicating that on LinkedIn. So check us out on LinkedIn. We do have a little bit of Facebook presence, but most of what we do, most of our communication goes through LinkedIn or over our website.
Amazing. I'll put the links in the show notes and below the video. Thank you so much for being here again for another amazing episode of the Artificial Intelligence Podcast.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Artificial Intelligence Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. We'll be back next Monday with more tips and strategies on how to leverage AI to grow your business and achieve better results. In the meantime, if you're curious about how AI can boost your business's revenue, head over to artificialintelligencepod.com/calculator. Use our AI revenue calculator to discover the potential impact AI can have on your bottom line. It's quick, easy, and might just change the way you think about your business. While you're there, catch up on past episodes, leave a review, and check out our socials. If you enjoyed this episode, I've got 2 more that I think you're going to love. Click one of these videos to dive into more awesome content, and don't forget to subscribe for even more insights on using AI to grow your business. And I'll see you in the next one.